All right. I think I'm on. Welcome, everyone online. Hello. Thank you for joining us. Tonight, we've got Daniel. We're in the end here, so we're going to cover chapter 10 for sure, and then into chapter 11. We're not going to get through chapter 11. But basically what we've got is Daniel 10 through 12 are the last three chapters of the book. It encompasses a single vision that Daniel receives. I believe it's his final vision that he gets. And tonight is not going to be, well, I won't say as much fun. It's basically kind of going through a history. Because as all of Daniel, really, one of the overarching themes is how God is in control of everything. You know, all these Babylonian kings, put themselves up as God, and they weren't anything. Only God knows everything and is control of all events, no matter what it looks like, no matter who is in charge that we can see. God is the one moving all the pieces. And so that's going to be really the big theme going on here. And chapter 10 is kind of the introduction to the vision. And Daniel sees the Son of Man, and so there's that kind of going on there. And then we get into chapter 11, where he starts detailing the vision. And it's a little bit, it's less, it's not as symbolic or dramatic as the previous visions where, you have like a leopard with 4 wings or anything like that. It is Daniel receiving this vision of pretty much exactly what's going to go down for the next 300-400 years between the Empire of Persia, the Greek Empire, and basically what it comes down to is, and we're just kind of go through the verses and say, and this was the actual history, and this is how it lines up. It kind of amounts to where, like, if somebody were to come to God and say, "Oh, so you know how everything's going to play out? Like, you've given us some visions that are very vague and like weird animals and such that could be, interpreted anyway. Prove that you really know what's going on." So God says, "Okay," and like lays out exactly like, "Okay, and here's the lottery numbers, and he's giving specific detail about what's going to happen." So I thought actually it would have been really helpful to give you like a nice little handout with like a timeline and but I thought about that about 40 minutes ago. Sorry. So,
good intentions.
Yeah. So that is about it. Now, when we get further into chapter 11 and then into 12, that is when we get into some like resurrection kind of stuff. So not only does he kind of give a vision of the immediate future, he's also going to overlay that with the eschatological, the end times reality of this all, and how and when God is in control of this span of time and all time, and at the end of time there will be the resurrection where the good are, the believers, eternal life with God, the others eternal perdition. So there we go. So we're just going to dive in. First slide. Any questions first? Oh yeah, don't worry. First slide. There we go. In the 3rd year of Cyrus, king of Persia, a word was revealed to Daniel, who was named Belteshazzar. And the word was true, and it was a great conflict. And he understood the word and had understanding of the vision. In those days, I, Daniel, was mourning for 3 weeks. I ate no delicacies, no meat or wine entered my mouth, nor did I anoint myself at all for the full 3 weeks. All right. So, in the 3rd year of Cyrus's reign. So, and we're going to get pretty specific with dates, too. So this is going to be 536 BC, the 3rd year since Cyrus comes and takes over Babylon and kind of establishes his Persian Empire. 2 years following Cyrus's edict, allowing the Jews to return, or to begin returning. So 2 years have passed. Cyrus has said, "Okay, Jews, you may return to your home, and you are going to rebuild your city. You're going to rebuild your temple." Awesome. Well, 2 years has happened, and has gone by, and Daniel has likely received word that, yeah, and we haven't started building the temple yet. So yeah, a lot of time has gone by, and nothing has really happened. So this is probably why Daniel is mourning, and part of his kind of his grief in all this is that, he was, especially if you look at Daniel, he was faithful. He was the guy, and he was a great symbol for his people about faithfulness, and one day God will restore us. Won't that be great? And look, now it's happening. God has brought up Cyrus, and now he has allowed us to go home. Wouldn't you want to, let's rebuild that temple so we can worship God finally, because we haven't been able to worship him like we should. And then 2 years go by, and it's like, great. So, and to note that he's still in Babylon, so he is advanced in age, so probably was not able to return to with the exiles, or was just needed there, whatever. Remarks that he ate no delicacies, no meat, no wine for a full 3 weeks. What we're going to find out in the next few verses is we're actually going to get an exact date for when this stuff happened, and what we find out is that this all occurs basically what I think a week after the Passover would have been. So a week after the Passover, he's saying, I haven't eaten or drunk or anything for 3 weeks, which means that he did not take part in the Passover. Now, nobody really had taken part in the Passover because there was no more temple. It had been destroyed. They were in exile. But they could still, to a degree, observe the Passover. They could still, they could have the meal. It wouldn't be the full kind of pilgrimage back home thing, but they could have celebrated it. So it is kind of worth noting that, Daniel is so distressed that even he is not observing the Passover. It is a very, very dire kind of situation that he finds himself in. All right, next slide. He's like, too busy. Oh, wait, go back. I can't believe we forgot. Sorry, hold on. Go to the dessert slide. We forgot to show people what they're missing at home. Yeah, there's the stuff. That's orange marmalade walnut cake with buttercream frosting, still warm and delicious. And I think I ate mine in a minute. Yeah. Okay, now you can go back. That was good. Oh, that was good stuff. All right, that slide again, please. It should be verses 4 through 6. Cool. All right. 4 through 6. On the 24th day of the first month, there we go, as I was standing on the bank of the great river, that is the Tigris, I lifted up my eyes and looked, and behold, a man clothed in linen, with a belt of fine gold from Uphaz around his waist. His body was like beryl, his face like the appearance of lightning, his eyes like flaming torches, his arms and legs like the gleam of burnished bronze, and the sound of his words like the sound of a multitude. All right. So the first 24th day of the first month equates to April 23rd. So we get very specific here. Which also kind of goes into the specificity of the vision that he's getting, where, some of the previous visions, they were kind of loosely, not terribly loosely, but it was like pointing to people, but the times weren't necessarily distinct. And it was kind of like, well, and this sort of applies, you could see it in a few different ways. Daniel is making a point to be like, and this day, and this is when it happened, and exactly. And we're going to see how the events of the vision actually lay over perfectly with everything that's going to be happening. So, it's kind of nice where we get a vision where it's specific and not exactly left to interpretation. All right, so he sees a man. He sees a man clothed in linen. Now, the word and the word usage and construction of dressed in linen or vested in linen indicates he's wearing priestly garments. So he is a priestly sort of character. And, well, I'll give you 3 guesses who this one who looks like a son of man, who this might be. Hey, there we go. All right. Yes, consensus is absolutely Jesus. So we get a couple parallels between Ezekiel and Revelation with what he describes here. And in Ezekiel, basically he sees a vision of God with some cherubim, but Ezekiel describes him as looking like a man. He's gleaming like metal above his waist, and he has fire below. The appearance of gleaming metal and fire are all about him. There's flashes of lightning. His presence is like fire, and when he speaks, it's the sound of many waters, rushing waters, the voice of the Almighty. And then in Revelation, which we know for sure is Jesus, he describes him as like a son of man, clothed in a long robe, gold belt around his chest. We've got a belt of fine gold around his waist, so it's around there somewhere. Face shining like the sun, eyes like flames of fire, feet like polished bronze, voice like many waters. So it's not really hard to make the jump here and say, it's just the pre-incarnate Jesus. He's seen Jesus before Jesus is, incarnate. So far, it's very easy. He's distressed, and he has a vision of Jesus. Easy, right? Any questions so far? Nope.
What happened in January, February, March?
January. Well, this is the Jewish calendar, so it's different.
Oh, okay. I was wondering. It said the first month.
Oh, yeah. It's the month name is Nisan, I think. I think that's the first month. But yeah, it's a different calendar.
They still go by that?
Well, I mean, some, I would assume. But I mean, mostly, almost everybody uses our calendar. Was it the Gregorian? Is that the one, or are we on the what is it?
Julian?
Yeah. I'm one of them Roman guys. I don't know. Yeah. All right. Cool. Next slide, verses 7 through 11. And I, Daniel, alone saw the vision, for the men who were with me did not see the vision, but a great trembling fell upon them, and they fled to hide themselves. So I was left alone and saw this great vision. No strength was left in me. My radiant appearance was fearfully changed. My radiant appearance. And I retained no strength. Then I heard the sound of his words, and as I heard the sound of his words, I fell on my face in deep sleep with my face to the ground. And behold, a hand touched me and set me trembling on my hands and knees. And he said to me, O Daniel, man greatly loved, understand the words that I speak to you, and stand upright, for now I have been sent to you. And when he had spoken this word to me, I stood up trembling. All right. So it's kind of a rare occurrence to receive a vision in the company of other people. Usually you get a vision by yourself. Elisha and his servants, Elisha gets a vision, and his servants they eventually see it. You think Paul or Saul, on the road to Damascus, he sees a vision of Christ, and he's got companions with him, and they don't see him. So it's not unique, but it is unusual. His reaction is similar to his reaction back in chapter 8, where he kind of falls to the ground, he falls asleep, he's just like knocked out. My radiant appearance was fearfully changed. So he everything, he just like loses it, just like falls over in a heap. Probably also that he's been fasting. That doesn't help. So he has no strength, and he just drops. And then he touches him, just like in chapter 8, just as in like Isaiah, when he goes to the throne room of God and the cherubim takes and touches the coal to his lips. There's oftentimes in visions, there's a touching like, no, be not afraid, or stand up, or something like that. So he strengthens him to receive the vision. So already Daniel is weak, and now he's overcome by he's overcome. So he touches him to give him strength to receive this vision. And of course, man greatly loved. God loves him. Also shows that he has chosen Daniel for this special role to give this vision to. I guess with, you can look at many of the prophets, especially Jeremiah, they were chosen. Jeremiah was chosen to be prophet and to deliver a message, and he hated it. He was miserable the whole time. I didn't want to say he hated it, but he was miserable. He didn't, I would imagine many of the prophets during their tasks did not say, wow, God sure does love me. He's given me this great thing to do where I'm sharing the message, and people want to kill me for it. So,
Jonah, too.
Yeah, Jonah, well, he had some other issues. he didn't like God, so there was that. It's kind of important to remember that, yes, when God has chosen you for your various roles and the things that happen in your life, it's because you're loved, even if some days you may doubt that. Like, oh, God, you're just playing a great joke on me. No, it's because he loves you. All right, questions? This is easy. All right, cool. Verses 12 through 14, next slide. Okay. Then he said to me, "Fear not, Daniel, for from the first day that you set your heart to understand and humbled yourself before your God, your words have been heard, and I have come because of your words. The prince of the kingdom of Persia withstood me 21 days, but Michael, one of the chief princes, came to help me, for I was left there with the kings of Persia, and came to make you understand what is to happen to your people in the latter days, for the vision is for days yet to come." Okay, this is where it gets weird. So from the first day, Daniel's prayer has been heard from the first day when he started to pray and when he started his fast. He says 3 weeks have gone by. So at the beginning of his 3 weeks, when he began his fast, this was when Daniel started to pray to God and appeal to him. So the cool thing is he says, from the first day, your words have been heard. So as soon as you open your mouth to speak to me, I heard you. So this is a nice little, God hears your prayer. Now, as before, when Daniel started to pray and God heard it, and right before he says, as you spoke it, the word was sent out. Well, now he waits 3 weeks. So this is a nice little reality check that God will hear you, but he'll take his time, maybe. It's like when I hear my kids, I'm like, I don't want to answer you right now. I hear you. Now leave me alone until I'm ready to talk to you. Similar kind of thing. Now we have this, okay. So he was delayed, okay? The prince of the kingdom of Persia withstood me for 21 days, but Michael, one of the chief princes, came to help me. Okay. So, the prince of the kingdom of Persia. Now that's an unusual phrase because there is no prince of the kingdom of Persia. They don't refer to him as princes, either satraps or kings or something along the like. So what he is referring to in this is not a human, but a demon. The prince, kind of like the princes of the earth and the air, of this world that Jesus contends with. So this demon, this demonic presence or power that was over the kingdom of Persia withstood me 21 days. All right, so he's been oppressing, dealing with things. And basically what we see, and we're going to hear a little bit more later, is that the presence of these demonic forces show up to counter God's plans. So as soon as God says, okay, Cyrus, I'm going to use you to go in and set my people free, well, all of a sudden he'll start talking about the prince of the kingdom of Persia is now, against God's plans. Satan is always, anytime God wants to do something for his people, Satan is right there trying to oppose it. So that's not unusual. The unusual thing might be that you look at this and say, okay, well, this is Jesus. And he says, okay, the prince of, so this demonic entity withstood me for 21 days. But Michael, the archangel, came to help me. For I was left there with the kings of Persia. Right?
Okay.
Why does Jesus need help? Right. Okay. If you really try to work it out yourself and okay, let me make some excuses, whatever, it doesn't work. So the best way to look at this is, this is a very Lutheran move. We look at it through the lens of the cross, where, all that Christ does is not necessarily going to be power overwhelming, okay? And so think about this. So there's a situation where Jesus is, and we're going to get a little bit more, I think, where he's alone. Anyway, so he's alone contending with a demon for a length of time. So he's all by himself, contending with a demon. And then at the end of that, an angel or some angels come to attend to him. Does this sound familiar?
Christ was in the desert.
Bingo. Yeah. It's not that unusual when you start to see, and this is a wonderful example of like, if we just sat here trying to be like, well, why does Jesus need help? And we crowdsourced a lot of possibilities, and we try to come up with some reason why it makes sense to us, why Jesus would need help with anything. We're going to get a lot of weird places, maybe someplace close to true, but whatever. It's all going to be our thoughts. However, if you actually use Scripture, you go into Scripture and say, hey, where else has this happened? Maybe let's get an idea. And you can actually see where, oh yeah, Jesus in the wilderness, he's alone, contending with Satan. Now, Satan withstood him, sure. I mean, he wasn't like beaten back or anything. I mean, Jesus was actually allowing him to do his thing. But Jesus was alone with it, contended for a period of time. And then when it was done, angels came to minister to him, to attend to him. So this right here, then all of a sudden, all the difficulty of what this means just kind of, it's like, why did it have to be like that back then? I don't know. But that's the way it was. And we have, we have some other scripture that says this is not unusual. Like, for however this happened, maybe it was to point ahead to that. Could be. But for all we know, it's like, this is what happened, and it's not unusual to see that. So we've got, so he was left there with the kings of Persia.
But in the example in the wilderness, he was incarnate.
Right. Yeah.
Here he's all spirit,
Yeah. I mean, it's not like a perfect,
except that
like, lining up.
Daniel is seeing him.
Yeah, yeah. So it could be, like giving Daniel, because when he says, for the vision or for days yet to come, it's understand what is to happen to your people in the latter days. It could be in a sense of like, hey, and I'm going to do the same thing again, what I'm doing here. Could be, because like how we see, Jesus doing most of his, this Sunday, we've got the feeding of the 5,000. And this is Jesus in the wilderness feeding his people. So he's redoing what happened in Exodus. So everything, or a lot of things that we see in the Old Testament happening, Jesus redoes. And so then we look back at the Old Testament and say, oh, even if we don't understand it, we say, it was pointing to this. Kind of like, my favorite is the Moses with the serpent on the pole. I love that one. Because if you follow along with the readings, it's like, the people are grumbling, and they're always grumbling through the wilderness, fine. And God usually is pretty patient, and all of a sudden it's like, and the people grumble, he's like, death snakes for you all. And it's just like, really, it comes out almost, not out of the blue, but I mean, it's like, whoa, okay, cool. And, these snakes are coming and biting, and tons of people are dying. But he lift up a snake on a pole, look up at it, and you'll be saved. So you look at it in isolation, and it's like, what? Why? It's like, really? That seems excessive? That seems like it's a really weird punishment for what they're dealing with. But then you can look at it and say, okay, well, he's pointing ahead. He's showing like, okay, gravity of sin, absolutely, okay, I get that. Punishment for wages of sin is death, get it. And now he's going to be doing something with that. So you can it's not always a complete match, but roughly. All right. I was left there with the kings of Persia. So kings, indicating that he was there for a number of kings. So basically, he talks about spiritual attacks that began, and he was there with kings of Persia. So spiritual attacks have happened, they're happening, they're going to happen. Which, yeah. We're in them right now, if you weren't aware. All right. Good? See, this is a very long intro, but easy. Next slide, 15 through 19. All right. When he had spoken to me according to these words, I turned my face to the ground and was mute. And behold, one in the likeness of the children of man touched my lips. Then I opened my mouth and spoke. I said to him who stood before me, O Lord, by reason of the vision, pains have come upon me, and I retain no strength. How can my Lord's servant talk with my Lord? For now no strength remains in me, and no breath is left in me. Although he's pretty talkative. Again, one having the appearance of a man touched me and strengthened me. And he said, O man greatly loved, fear not. Peace be with you. Be strong and of good courage. And as he spoke to me, I was strengthened and said, "Let my Lord speak, for you have strengthened me." So a big, long passage here that basically, Daniel, he keeps receiving more, and he's like, oh, this is too much. Like, I can't bear, and he's in the presence of Christ. He's receiving this, and he's, oh, it's too much. I can't speak. I can't hear. I'm falling apart. And he touches him and strengthens him. He touches him again, strengthens him. And as he spoke, he was strengthened. So the cool thing is just, Jesus is reaching out to him, providing his strength. He is his strength. And then as he's hearing the word, he's strengthened. He receives the word, and he's strengthened to face this thing. So it's a nice little kind of, we receive the word, we're strengthened. Nice little kind of connection there. But very straightforward. I mean, there's no hidden kind of like, ooh. Compared to some of the stuff earlier in Daniel, this is a piece of cake. Any questions about that? Easy. All right. Next slide. Chapter 10, verse 20 through 11, verse 2, or 1. 1, I guess. Whatever. Yeah, something like that. Then he said, "Do you know why I have come to you? But now I will return to fight against the prince of Persia. And when I go out, behold, the prince of Greece will come. But I will tell you what is inscribed in the book of truth. There is none who contends by my side except against these except Michael, your prince. And as for me, in the first year of Darius the Mede, I stood up to confirm and strengthen him." All right. So I will return to fight against the prince of Persia, and then the prince of Greece will come. So I am contending with these evil forces, the spiritual battles, and behold, more spiritual battles are to come. So I am contending with those demons afflicting you now. I will deal with the ones who will afflict you. The book of truth is only, I believe it's only, this book of truth is only described here. There are other books in Scripture that allude to different things. But this one seems to be indicating this is the book of the events that God has laid out. So basically, it's history that hasn't happened yet. So this is the book that says, this is everything and exactly how it's going to happen, the book of the truth of things. So the reality behind everything that happens as God has seen it, ordained it, foreknew it, etc., etc. There's none who contends by my side except against these, except Michael, your prince. So in saying that Michael, the archangel, is your prince, he's kind of saying that Michael is, the chief angel who is your guy. He defends you. He is the one who leads angels to watch over you. He's all the angels that are watching your back and, making sure you're not going too far off course. Michael is here with them. So he is contending by Jesus' side. So not that, Jesus needs the help, but he's like, I have chosen these angels to be by you. And he says, as for me, in the first year of Darius the Mede, so way back when Darius first came in, when Satan started to afflict via the kingdom of Persia, he said, I stood to confirm and strengthen him, meaning Michael. So I, sent Michael. I ordained him to go. All that. So that is the intro. Any questions about that?
Where it says your prince, he means your prince, like the prince of all believers, the good side.
Yeah. Kind of like, because we have the prince of Persia and prince of Greece, which are the demonic, the fallen angels, and then your prince is Michael and the good angels. So your princes and all that coincide with that. Yep. All right. Here's where we just get a whole bunch of history. And again, I'm sorry I don't have an outline or like a timeline. This would have been so much easier because it gets, well, did anybody, it's like this. Did anybody see the show Game of Thrones? Okay, the rest of you are much better people. It has a certain reputation for being just, quite trashy TV. But the thing that kept throwing me, because I saw the series, is that in this next section it talks about the king of the north and the king of the south. And one of the characters, or one of the kingdoms in that TV show is the north, and there's a king of the north. And so I couldn't...
Winter is coming.
I tried so hard to focus on this, but every time I said the king of the north, I'm like, oh, well, that's weird. So my brain went to that, and it just got all confused. But so we're going to talk about kings of the north and kings of the south. And I'm going to try to keep these straight for you as much as possible. All right, first slide should be verse 2. And now I will show you the truth. Behold, 3 more kings shall arise in Persia, and a fourth shall be far richer than all of them. And when he has become strong through his riches, he shall stir up all against the kingdom of Greece. So already you can see where this is a lot more specific than previous visions. You know, it's not like, it's like, no, boom. Now, there were more than just 4 other kings of Persia, but he's telling a story about what's going to happen, and what he's leading up to, it falls right in line. So, there were, after Cyrus, there were 4 kings. So you had, the first one was Cambyses. The second one after Cyrus, was a guy who... Nobody's even sure who he was. There was a claim that he was an imposter, impersonating someone else. It's just, I wasn't even going to begin to get into that. But so there's the second king, and then the third king after that was Darius the first. But then the fourth king is Xerxes, and this is Xerxes with Queen Esther, I believe. So we're getting into that whole thing. So this is Xerxes. He's not, well, we're not there yet. So Xerxes, who is 486 to 465 BC. Okay. So he certainly, all right, so what does it say about him? Far richer than all of them. Well, he did have riches, absolutely. He became strong, yeah. Well, he shall stir up all against the kingdom of Greece. He was kind of the one to lead the thrust against the kingdom of, or against Greece, enlisting people from all parts of his kingdom to join his army to invade Greece. And I believe this was the Battle of Thermopylae. So, think back to where, you had all the city-states in Greece were all kind of, they weren't really aligned, and, the Spartans were doing their thing, but then all of a sudden they all kind of came together and became this huge force, right? So this is what's going on there. And so he shall stir up all against the kingdom of Greece. So he definitely did, and he tried. But because of what he did, he actually united all these Greek city-states. And they were able to repel all the attacks. Quite famously, in fact. Now, there's a slight, that's not an issue, but it's interesting that he says kingdom of Greece, because there was no kingdom of Greece. Greece was a confederation of city-states. But in terms of this being a vision and calling it the kingdom of Greece, in terms of he was actually brought all the states together, you could say the kingdom of America in a fanciful way, to say that all the states combined. It's just another way of saying it. So he caused them all to join together, and this is Greece now under Philip of Macedonia. And who's Philip's son? Who's
Alexander.
Alexander the Great, yes. So we're getting right into that. Next slide, verses 3 through 4. Speaking of Alexander, then a mighty king shall arise, who shall rule with great dominion, and do as he wills, and he surely did. And as soon as he is risen, his kingdom shall be broken and divided toward the 4 winds of heaven, but not to his posterity, nor according to the authority with which he ruled. For his kingdom shall be plucked up and go to others besides these. All right, so Alexander the Great, yeah, he rose up quick, conquered everything, and just everything happened quick. But, notice he says, as soon as he is risen, his kingdom shall be broken. So, conquests of Alexander began in, what was it, 334? He died in 332. No, not 332. 322, right? Yeah, 323, sorry. So all in a span of about 10 years that he conquered the whole known world, basically back there, and then he died. So it just went real quick. His kingdom was divided, it says, into the four heavens, four winds of heaven. His kingdom was divided broadly into four main sections between four of his greatest generals. So we already talked about that in one of the previous visions. The successive kingdoms would not be as strong as him, and not to his posterity or according to his authority, so he will not have any heirs. None of his family will rule. And his son, infant son, was killed. Was he a baby at the time? Well, anyway, he had a young son, and I think somebody else related to him also killed. So there goes Alexander. So far, it's like, okay, tracking with exactly what's going to happen. All right. Next slide, verses 5 and 6. Oh boy. Then the king of the south shall be strong, but one of his princes shall be stronger than he, and shall rule, and his authority shall be a great authority. After some years they shall make an alliance, and the daughter of the king of the south shall come to the king of the north, and to make an agreement. But she shall not retain the strength of her arm, and he and his arm shall not endure. But she shall be given up, and her attendants, he who fathered her, and he who supported her in those times. Okay. King of the north. These are the kings, basically the Seleucid Empire. Okay? Main guy being Seleucus. I think that's right. The kings of the south is going to be the Ptolemaic Empire, better known as Egypt. And guess who this guy was? Ptolemy. Real challenging here. All right. So, what we got going here? And kind of, I think I kind of, okay, so verse 5. Just kind of look at the verses as we go and try to pick up what I'm describing here. So the king of the south, Ptolemy, shall be strong. Ptolemy became king over Egypt in 323 BC. But one of his princes shall be stronger. Okay, now for that, we have to jump over to here, to Seleucus. Okay? Seleucus the first, back in 321, was designated satrap of Babylon, so high governor, ruler of Babylon. Well, Seleucus was attacked by Antigonus, who is another one of Alexander's generals, and Seleucus fled to Egypt. Okay, Ptolemy made Seleucus one of his generals. Okay, so Seleucus is now in Egypt for a little bit. So here we go. King of the south shall be strong, but one of his princes, Seleucus, shall be stronger, and he shall rule. Ptolemy and Seleucus defeated Antigonus. So the Antigonus who drove this guy over here, they banded together, defeated Antigonus. All right. So at that point, Seleucus returned to Babylon and became king. So Seleucus comes back here and kind of establishes this Seleucid Empire. Okay. So Babylon, Mesopotamia, I think. Mesopotamia, Syria, that kind of whole area. So yeah. Because Babylon would be Iraq, Syria, Mesopotamia. So that section. All right. So, and he shall rule, and his authority shall be a great authority. So we've got Ptolemy and Seleucus. Verse 6. After some years, they shall make an alliance. Well, time goes by. And during this time, the various kings of these dynasties, they fought each other. They wanted to expand their kingdoms. We can't understand that because there are no empires in our world that wants to expand by invading other neighboring countries. We just don't understand how this works. But they actually used to do this back in the day. An ancient concept that is just completely gone from our present understanding. It's not really great when you read this stuff and you're like, oh, it's happening again, and then you read what happens later and you're like, oh God. So like, awesome. So anyway, they've been fighting, everybody, each other, trying to expand, until they get to 250 BC, and there's a peace treaty. So, after some years, they make an alliance, okay? So we've got, where are we? Ptolemy II and Antiochus II. So Antiochus, we remember him, but a different Antiochus. So now we're back down here to Antiochus and Ptolemy II. All right, they make a peace treaty, a marriage alliance between Ptolemy's daughter, Berenice. Yeah. She is to marry Antiochus. So there's a marriage alliance. All right, exactly what we have in verse 6. The daughter of the king of the south, his daughter, shall come to the king of the north to make an agreement. Okay, so they do. But she shall not retain the strength of her arm. He and his arm shall not endure, but she shall be given up, and her attendants, he who fathered her, and he who supported her in those times. So according to Scripture then, so this Bernice will not retain the strength of her arm, and he and his arm will not endure. So Antiochus will not endure. She will not endure. She'll be given up, so she'll die, her attendants, her father, and he who supported her in those times. Actually, he'll die too. But so it's like a lot of death. Well, what do we see going on? There's this marriage alliance. So Berenice, Ptolemy's daughter, is given to Antiochus. Well, problem is Antiochus is already married to Laodice. Laodicea is the place. Laodice is the woman. So he's already married. So in order to make this alliance work, he's forced to leave his wife, Laodice, and he marries Berenice. Okay. In 246 BC, Antiochus decides, hey, I want my old wife back. So he takes back Laodice. Antiochus died not long afterwards. Rumor was that Laodice poisoned him. Oddly enough, she wasn't too thrilled to have Berenice and her kid around, so she arranged the murder of Berenice and her child to ensure that her son, Seleucus II, would reign. Oddly enough, in that same year that all this happened, many of Berenice's attendants and even her father died in that very same time frame. And he who supported her, so Antiochus, who initially supported her, dies as well. So again, it's like you're seeing how it's working out exactly. I mean, it's just he's laying it out perfectly. And like I said, it's like God is saying, "Oh, you don't believe me that I know what's going to happen? Just you wait. You might not be seeing it, Daniel, but I guarantee your ancestors or your descendants will." So everything is happening, boom, 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 exactly as God lays out. Questions about that? See it totally easier with a timeline.
Are we going to be tested?
Yes. Write down every date. All right. Next slide, verses 7 through 9. And from a branch from her roots, one shall arise in his place. He shall come against the army and enter the fortress of the king of the north. And he shall deal with them and shall prevail. He shall also carry off to Egypt their gods with their metal images and their precious vessels of silver and gold. And for some years he shall refrain from attacking the king of the north. Then the latter shall come into the realm of the king of the south, but shall return to his own land. Okay. Yeah. I mean, honestly, it is so soap opera. It's ridiculous.
It'd be hard to follow in a movie.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's like every movie you've ever seen of like either the Middle Ages or whatever, ancient with castles and kings, and it's just like people being horrible and backstabbing. It's like, yeah, this is the truth is worse than the fiction. Okay, so now we're going to get here. Let's make some room here. We've got Ptolemy III And Seleucus the second. Okay. All right. Oddly enough, there's conflict between these two. Shocking, right? So Ptolemy the third is actually Berenice's brother. So you can imagine why and he's the son of Laodice. So you can see there's some bad blood there. So he succeeded his father, and he invaded. So Syria is part of this place. So he invades Syria to take some vengeance to avenge the murder of his sister. Right. So he captures the capital of Antioch. He captured Laodice, had her executed. All right. And brought back many spoils back to Egypt, including, so the Persian king Cambyses, he was like really early on, right after Alexander. He had actually taken like graven idols, golden idols from Egypt and all other stuff, and taken it to Syria. So Ptolemy comes in and returns the gods, the metal gods of Egypt, back to Egypt. Well, wouldn't you know it? What does it say? He shall also carry off to Egypt their gods with their metal images. All right, so, well, let's back up. A branch from her roots, one shall arise in his place. So, branch, okay, good. He shall come against the army and enter the fortress of the king of the north. He shall prevail. He did. He'll also carry off to Egypt their gods. He did. He brought back to Egypt their golden idols and whatnot. For some years, he shall refrain from attacking. So he does this, brings it back. He refrains from attacking because he had returned to Egypt to deal with some uprisings going on back home. So he's not going to kind of push the advantage. Like he's already defeated, but he's not going to go deeper. He had to return to Egypt to deal with various uprisings. Then the latter shall come into the realm of the king to the south, but shall return to his own land. 2 years later, so 2 years after this, in 242 BC, Seleucus then tries to invade Egypt, but he can't. He's pushed back. Exactly as it's laid out here in Daniel. Wouldn't you know it? All right, verses 10 through 12. Next slide. I know, it's like we had so much fun with Lion's Den and Fiery Furnace, and that's like exciting. And I was like, history lesson. Who was it? And it's just, bear with me. It does get better. All right, 10 through 12. Good. His son shall wage war and assemble a multitude of great forces, which shall keep coming and overflow and pass through, and again shall carry the war as far as his fortress. Then the king of the south, moved with rage, shall come out and fight against the king of the north. And he shall raise a great multitude, but it shall be given into his hand. And when the multitude is taken away, his heart shall be exalted, and he shall cast down tens of thousands, but he shall not prevail. Okay. So we get the next bunch, the third, Seleucus the third. Actually, he reigned just for 3 years, and then we get another Antiochus. Just can't get rid of these guys. Antiochus the... whatever. Bump him up to 4. All right. So, what we got? His sons shall wage war. Okay, so they keep fighting. Okay, so the king of the south, moved with rage. I'll come out. I want to make sure I'm in the right place here. All right. His son shall wage war and assemble a multitude of great forces, which shall keep coming and overflow and pass through, and again carry the war as far as his fortress. So, Antiochus, sensing some weakness over here, because he was a little kid at the time. When he became ruler, he was very young. So Antiochus says, now's the time. So he assembles a great force, campaigned in Syria and Palestine, 219, 218 BC. So he tries to get back some of that land that was theirs, and actually does push through as far as his fortress. So actually does break into it. Verse 11, then the king of the south, moved with rage, shall come out and fight against the king of the north. So he will come back, he fights back. He shall raise a great multitude, but it shall be given into his hand. So both forces actually raised up a big army. Now he sensed weakness, but the Egyptians actually had a pretty significantly larger force. So he's going up against a larger force, his great force. They don't win. Egypt prevails. Seleucus defeated, or Antiochus defeated. Verse 12. Okay, so now back to Ptolemy. So this is later on. He's older. Or is that the 5th? Man, I seriously started to go like woo when I was writing some of this stuff. So 4th, 5th, whatever. Ptolemy's older, whichever one it is. When it says his heart shall be exalted, it's not like, yay, Ptolemy. What it actually refers to is his heart will become arrogant, like he exalted his heart. Which, oddly enough, and this is really cool, because this is an extra biblical source. This is one of ancient historians wrote in one of these histories that when Ptolemy returned to Egypt, so after Ptolemy, defeated and like, hey, we won, he came back to Egypt and, quote, he abandoned all noble pursuits and gave himself up to the life of debauchery. So arrogance takes hold, and he's just, wine, women, song, sex, drugs, rock and roll, however you want to take it. He shall give, okay, he shall cast down tens of thousands, but he shall not prevail. Oddly enough, the people didn't like him too much. And they weren't really thrilled with what he was doing. The kicker is, so, he wants to defeat them, right? So what does he do? Well, he arms his people to the teeth. I mean, he raises up the people, armies, and like outfits them with every, whatever. Well, he comes back home. Guess what he's got? An unhappy people who are very well armed and ready to fight. Like, you did not think this thing through. So following their victory, the people come home, and they're like, we don't want to follow the king's orders because he's, for various reasons. And so now he's still strong enough to, he's not overthrown immediately. But basically for the rest of his reign, he's which is only a few years, I think, they were able to maintain like a constant state of revolt until his death. So he is able to put down tens of thousands of his own people, but he's not able to prevail. So they basically, they outlast him. So yeah, it's kind of fun. So yes, if you're going to take over and you want to have a lot of allies and equip them well, make sure you stay friends with them.
Is that the only way to get rid of kings is to kill them?
Apparently.
I don't see any
Well,
stepping down.
Well, it's either that or elections, right? No political commentary here. Only history. All right.
Awesome.
How long did all this back and forth fighting take? How many?
Oh gosh, this is like what we've been talking about here has gone from, let's see, we started
486.
so 334, 486. Oh yeah. So this was like the start of the vision was here. 324 is kind of when Alexander the Great, that's when that all happened. So the king of the north, king of the south stuff was in 323. And now we're down to about 200 BC. So this has been going on for, the king of the north, king of the south stuff has been going on for 125 years.
And oddly enough, they're still fighting over
Oh yeah, it's,
land.
yeah, it's like, nothing changes. Solomon, there's nothing new under the sun. Seriously, you could read some, like, the whole invading other countries thing, it's but it's like, it doesn't change. It just doesn't. So, and if you go back to Xerxes, where it all started, then you're talking, this whole thing has been going on for 250, almost 300 years. So, and which you can then understand how Daniel, he's hearing this vision, and the whole time he's like, because it's like, oh my gosh, and this is going to keep going. Right. It's depressing. It's like, this is not a good vision. It's not. It's just not.
Well, this particular infighting between these two dynasties goes pretty much all the way up to the time of Christ.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And depending on where the boundaries are drawn these days, it's still.
Right.
But no, yeah. And
Go on.
and actually, what we're going to get into here is they'll actually we'll see that he's even talking about the Jews in 200 BC are involved in this too. So yeah, it's just a whole mess. Oh yeah, it's ridiculous. And they're all they're friends and then they're not, then they're friends and they're not, then they're so yeah. Well, it's just like the morning prayer we've been having where it's between the kingdom of Judah and the kingdom of Israel. It's like, good Lord, you guys are idiots.
So that Xerxes, his daughter, what was his daughter's name, or was his son? Alexandria?
No.
Well, Philip of Macedonia, he had Alexander, and then Alexander didn't have any successors.
But that city, Alexandria, Egypt, is named after him probably, right?
Yes. Yeah, because he conquered everything. Yeah.
So that's where our Coptics come from,
Yeah. Yeah.
and they're still being persecuted.
Oh, very much so.
So really, nothing changed.
No,
They would understand it.
nothing ever
History
changes.
keeps repeating itself.
Sadly, yes. Sometimes, like, word for word, sometimes. All right, actually, that's worked out well. Last section, a little bit longer. All right, 13 through 19. For the king of the north shall again raise a multitude, greater than the first, and after some years he shall come on with a great army and abundant supplies. In those times many shall rise against the king of the south, and the violent among your own people shall lift themselves up in order to fulfill the vision, but they shall fail. Then the king of the north shall come and throw up siege works and take a well-fortified city. And the forces of the south shall not stand, or even his best troops, for there shall be no strength to stand. But he who comes against him shall do as he wills, and none shall stand before him. And he shall stand in a glorious land with destruction in his hand. He shall set his face to come with the strength of his whole kingdom, and he shall bring terms of an agreement and perform them. He shall give him the daughter of women to destroy the kingdom, but it shall not stand or be to his advantage. Afterward he shall turn his face to the coastlands, and shall capture many of them. But a commander shall put an end to his insolence. Indeed, he shall turn his insolence back upon him. Then he shall turn his face back toward the fortresses of his own land, but he shall stumble and fall and shall not be found. Okay. Ptolemy the Fifth. Antiochus, all right. These guys. All right. 204 BC, Ptolemy IV dies under mysterious circumstances. I got it all mixed up. I'm sorry. Ptolemy IV was older. His son Ptolemy V was only 5 years old at the time. So my apologies, I got a little mixed up. I can't imagine how. So Antiochus attacked Egypt and took back Syria. Okay? So back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. 200 BC, Antiochus won a decisive victory and gained control over southern Syria and Palestine. So this is where we get the very beginning. So for the king of the north, boom, Antiochus, great multitude, come on with a great army and abundant supplies. In those times he shall rise against the king of the south. The violent people where is it? The violent among your people. There were various either pro-Ptolemy or pro-Seleucus or Antiochus factions in amongst the Jews, and so they were at times very what do I want to say, proactive in their thoughts and their designs and wanting to help with things. So verse 14, many Egyptian provinces rebelled in the reign of Ptolemy IV and V. So there was a lot of unsettling things going on. Verse 15, the king of the north shall come and throw up siege works. So Antiochus actually besieged the city of Sidon, where an Egyptian general had retreated to. He notes here that there's no strength to stand. That's because it is well attested to that the siege of Sidon caused a famine, and the famine was what led this Egyptian general to give up, to surrender. So everything is like, okay, all right, it's tracking. Verse 16, but he who comes against him shall do as he wills, and none shall stand before him. He'll stand in the glorious land. So Antiochus now is in complete control of Palestine, the beautiful land, so basically where Israel is. So he is He is now controlling all that land. He can do whatever he wants. He's powerful, right? He's defeated Egypt. Verse 17, he shall set his face to come with the strength of his kingdom. All right, terms of an agreement. He shall give the daughter of women to destroy the kingdom, but it shall not stand to his advantage. Funny thing that happens, all right? Antiochus didn't invade Egypt. He was winning back his land, but did not go here because Rome is beginning to rise in power. And Rome is close to Egypt, well, closer than they were. Like, okay, let's just pull back a little bit, all right? So, because we've got this Roman power beginning to rise, Antiochus reaches out to Ptolemy, because of course they've only been fighting and conquering each other, reaches out to make an alliance. And he gives his daughter, Cleopatra, not that one, to Ptolemy. Different Cleopatra. So he gives his daughter Cleopatra to be his wife. Now Scripture says what? He will give him the daughter of women to destroy the kingdom. He hoped, Antiochus' plan was, hey, I get my daughter in there, she can undermine from within. What happens is she's like, I love him. She is fiercely loyal to Ptolemy. So it doesn't work out at all like Antiochus wants. So but it shall not stand and not be to his advantage. So yeah, all comes back on him. Afterward, he shall turn his face to the coastlands and shall capture many of them. So at this point, he begins to, he's like, well, that didn't work. So he tries to extend his power to the west on the Aegean Sea, conquering some of the islands, Thrace, and all that area, kind of the coastlands there. At which point, let's go back here. He'll turn his face to the coastlands, like he did. He'll capture many of them, yes, but a commander shall put an end to his violence. So he's out there in 196, campaigning throughout the Aegean Sea. Rome warns the guy. It's like, don't attack Greece. Don't do it. What do you think he did in 192 BC? He attacked Greece. Rome soundly beat him. Beat him down pretty good. 191 BC, defeated him in Thermopylae. Not that Thermopylae, but it was a popular place. Drove Antiochus east, and then at the Battle of Magnesia in 190, defeated him for good. The Roman commander Lucius Cornelius Scipio put an end to his insolence. Basically, Antiochus was forced to accept this treaty, which made him a Roman vassal, and he was forced to give up 20 hostages to Rome, including his own son, Antiochus IV. So he was, well, as Scripture says, he shall turn his face back toward the fortresses of his own land, but he shall stumble and fall and shall not be found. He is like, whew, laid low, son taken away. So that is halfway through chapter 11. So we still got a little bit more to go. But yeah, like I said, it's all history lesson. I mean, it's really fun stuff. Go, if you can find a good history book and read through some of this stuff, it's great drama. I mean, and I love the thing like, don't attack Greece, and like, okay. You just can't help it, But yeah, these guys just do all these stupid things. But the point is that God is the one saying, and this is exactly how it's going to play out. I mean, very specifically. This is not a vision that is like, well, maybe you can see this sort of. It's like, no. He's laying it out exactly. So, I know we didn't have too much discussion or questions, but the nature of this chapter. Anything, questions, thoughts about any of that? We're tired. These things are more fun usually.
Is there anything we need to remember about this?
Probably not. about like these details? No. Not really.
I have a question.
Sure.
I can't remember.
Really?
What was the beginning year, the third year of Cyrus?
That was 536. 536.
So this was written in 536.
Yeah.
But
Yep. So yeah, he's getting this vision of like 300 years of of history that he's seen, which, yeah, overwhelming.
Did he really need to know all of that? I mean, he was around for it anyway.
Did he need to? Probably, yeah, and poor Daniel was like, 80, 90 years old at that point. It's like, oh, come on, leave the guy alone.
Right.
Because he's like, I can't take it anymore. He's like, shut up, listen.
Give me more strength.
Yeah, he's like, I just want to go to bed. For Daniel, probably, I mean, in all practicality, probably not. But for us, absolutely. Because, and this is where, like,
Yes, Daniel.
critics and people who don't view the Bible as the Word of God, they looked at this and say, well, easily this was written in 100 BC, after the fact. All of this is written after the fact, so they just went back and said, oh, and this happened, and they crafted it this, attributed it to Daniel, so that way it makes it look like Daniel had a vision. But the problem with that is just how the rest of the book of Daniel is actually very cohesive, and there are elements to it where you actually see, like, it couldn't have possibly been written later. It was actually a product of that time.
So he wrote it in his old age.
Yes, yeah. All right, cool. So, we really probably have one more, oh yeah.
It would have been part of the Jewish scriptures then.
Yeah.
Long before these things happened.
Sure. So as they're going along, because yeah, he's written it down for them. So as these events are unfolding, the faithful who are reading this would be able to see, like, oh, it's happening. So it would have been a great encouragement for them, just as much as it is for us. And really, well, kind of like the book of Revelation is for us. We're like, oh, look, it's happening. Oh, God, it gets worse. Like, oh, no. So, yeah, this is kind of the book of Revelation for us. Daniel would be for the Old Testament post-exilic Jews, which is that's probably the best way to put it. All right, so one more class on this one. Probably we can wrap it up. Next week, however, we will not have class since we are taking a very brief getaway. From Wednesday to Saturday, we'll be somewhere. We'll be in Canada. So no class next week. We'll pick up the following week, and then we're going to start up in Hebrews.
Yay.
I mentioned before I did do Hebrews. I actually started Hebrews back in the pandemic, very beginning of the pandemic, but I was streaming it from my basement, so there was no interaction. And I'm actually quite eager to have interaction, but also to get a better video, because unfortunately that was in the whole, like, hey, nobody had access to barbershops. So if you go on YouTube and you find my Hebrews video, I mean, it's like, I've got pictures of me where I look like Charlton Heston from Ten Commandments, like full on Moses going on. It's not a good look, so I'll be very happy to replace those videos with this new video set.
Time period.
Where are you going in Canada?
Niagara Falls.
Oh, Niagara Falls.
And yes, the exchange rate is really favorable right now, so.
Yeah.
All right, so I think that's it. Thank you. Thank you all online, and thank you everybody here. We'll see you not next week, a week from next week. Yes. All right.